Appeaning-Addo about our presenter for today.
Thank you very much, Dr. Edwin, AJ. So this afternoon we are privileged to have a practitioner, a practitioner cum academic, who is going to share some insight into his practice. He is an architect, and he's got so many years of practice. And he is Daniel Teye. He is an award-winning architect and then managing director of Bricklane Development, a multidisciplinary firm of built environment professionals. He is a past member of the Council of the Ghana Institute of Architects, and an avid promoter of using local building materials for sustainable architecture. Notable among several projects that he's handled, he has in his portfolio works that include the Aqua Safari, which is located in Addo, and then Safari Valley Resort in the Okere District. And these two resorts feature a lot of traditional architecture, and basically that is what he's going to share some insight with us, why he chose to do that, and what are some of the benefits and everything. So you're very welcome, Daniel.
Thank you very much, Madam. Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and good afternoon to everyone here. Can you hear me? Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Good afternoon to everyone here. Today we're going to be talking about vernacular architecture and ecotourism as relates to development in Ghana. I will, as actors like to do, we like to stand and do our presentation. So, Madam Chair, with your permission. Begin the discussion, I want to have us go through a few definitions so that we situate the conversation properly. We'll begin by talking about what architecture is. We will delve into what vernacular architecture is, and then also move on to discuss ecotourism. Then we will talk about the Safari Valley Resort, and then continue to discuss issues that we experienced executing the project. So through infrastructure, the community involvement in the project, local authority involvement, industry support, funding, the socioeconomic development that we see happening there, and then we will conclude. So, architecture is defined as the art and science of designing and constructing buildings and other physical structures. Architects are usually interested in the behavior of people within spaces. We like to understand how our spaces respond to our needs And we do this by understanding the history, the beliefs of the people, the culture, the traditions, and so on and so forth. Design philosophies have been propounded in the past. Various styles of architecture have been, generated through time, and they vary from location to location. They respond to climate, they respond to material availability, and so on. We are also interested in form, material, structure, and of course, there's engineering to ensure that what we think artistically and contemplate actually stand the test of time. So architecture essentially combines artistic vision, technical knowledge, and practical considerations to create buildings and physical structures that meet the needs of individuals and communities. So in that situation, what we are talking about is where an individual has a home, but we are also thinking about the larger context of the community, including, say, University of Ghana. So there are lecturers, bungalows in here, but there is also the larger university community and the university community within Accra and so on. We're interested in all of that. So we move on to vernacular architecture. With the understanding of what architecture is. Vernacular architecture refers to the traditional building styles and techniques that have developed over time within a specific region or community. It is architecture that is created by local craftsmen and builders using locally available materials, and they reflect the cultural and social and environmental characteristics of the locations where they are developed. So examples of these are seen in, say, Insulands, somewhere in the Western region. And also you have examples of these built in the north, usually in mud and so on. But the point is that they always embody the history of the people, including their migration, the materials they found in the locations. They try to use these materials to respond to their need for shelter. Eventually, what happens is that over time, they learn to build correctly. Issues of, say, flooding and so on are mitigated as a result of experience. And the local craftsmen do it tacitly. So that is the approach to vernacular architecture. And it varies from location to location. So as you can see in various images over there, some of these are within the African continent, others in Europe, and so on. We continue by saying that they are valued for their sustainability, adaptability, and harmony with their natural surroundings, which represents the sustainable use of local materials, energy efficiency, with a deep understanding of local climate and ecosystem. Now, it goes to also, if we're able to do it well, it preserves and promotes community identity with a sense of place. So you notice that some of these buildings, like the one up here, this can be found normally along the coastal area. So the material available is gotten from coconut trees. So palm fronds are woven together to achieve a structure like that. And it is a need to solve a challenge of shelter. You find this material available and then you use it. In other areas where there is an abundance of, say, mud, you're able to put it together. Of course, it depends on the plasticity of the mud, but they always find a way of putting it together to create a shelter. Where there is also an abundance of stone, they put stone together to create that. In all of this, the response of community to meeting the challenges of the climate are what they've been trying to achieve. Of course, the famous Larabanga Mosque, represents the tenets of vernacular architecture. Now, since the 80s, vernacular architecture sort of transitioned from the most rudimentary, way to a more modern approach, where technology is introduced into the development of the architecture. So it combines locally inspired building techniques and materials with modern design principles and technology to achieve the product. This approach integrates the best aspects of both styles, resulting in buildings rooted in their cultural context and well situated to contemporary needs. The traditional elements of material, form, the history, beliefs, culture, behavior, lifestyle, well-being, and so on are all integrated into the design or the architectural style, vernacular modern architecture. Of course, this hybrid approach can create visually striking and culturally rich and environmentally conscious environments. The reason is that if you look at yes, okay. So the hybrid approach can create a visually striking, culturally rich, and environmentally conscious environments. And it allows for the preservation and celebration of local heritage while embracing innovation and progress. So in 2023, in the 21st century, it will be to some extent awkward try and build as our forefathers used to build 200 years ago. Of course, for the purposes of experience, we always also look to the certain aspects of it to meet our needs. Now, we will move on to, and these are examples of, vernacular modern architecture. So these can even be found in the cities. I don't think this thing is great. Bring the other one. Please. Hello? Fantastic. So, and these are examples of vernacular modern architecture. And as I was saying, they can be found even in the cities. But usually you also want to find them in unique environments so that they meet, the the needs of the people. Now we want to talk about ecotourism. The reason why we're going through all these definitions is so that the understanding of the subject is made a bit more easier for us. So bear with us. Ecotourism as a form of travel focuses on experiencing and preserving natural environments while promoting environmental conservation and community development. It involves visiting fragile and pristine natural areas with the intention of understanding, appreciating, and conserving natural and cultural heritage of a destination. So ecotourist sites are usually, the foresters will call them prime forests, or areas where human activity is minimal. So we find that the ecosystem, to a large extent, is intact. These are locations where ecotourists are interested in visiting. Now, the aim of this activity is to minimize the impact of human activity on the environment. And of course, to do that means you need to generate some kind of income, keep it, intact. For instance, just right here, Achimota Forest. Achimota Forest requires a certain level of preservation and conservation. But to do that, the Forestry Commission needs to raise funds to keep it intact. It's a continuous, consistent effort. So how do you ensure that you have the funds and the resources to keep it intact? You need to prevail upon something like ecotourism to do that. Now, some of the key principles of ecotourism are for environmental sustainability, education and interpretation, community involvement and benefits, conservation, and of course, resource management. Now, when we talk about these key principles, we are also looking at how we ensure that the would-be tourists meets this criteria to ensure that the concept of ecotourism is kept intact. Examples of places where people usually visit in Ghana, they have the Kakun Park, they have Mole, and places in the Western region and so on, Arabanga, even though not exactly an ecotourist site, the environment around it allows the tourists to experience some ecotourism potentials. Now, the experience aligns with the environment and cultural preservation, and it also creates a positive impact on destinations and ensures the long-term sustainability of tourism activities. So when the tourists come in, of course, they spend, the community benefits, whether it is any fruits, vegetables, arts, crafts, sculptural pieces, and so on. They engage the tourists with these, and all of that allows the long-term sustainability of the activity. Because it also offers travelers the opportunity to explore and appreciate the natural beauty and cultural heritage of a place while supporting conservation and benefiting local communities. Now, the current state of tourism in Ghana is still in its developmental stages. So, even though we possess a lot of potential, unfortunately, it's not well tapped. Some of the popular areas, as I mentioned earlier, Apple National Park, Morley National, the beaches in Cape Coast, and so on. And for those of you who have visited these areas, you will notice that it needs some more work. So in Ghana, our strengths in ecotourism include the biodiversity we have, the cultural heritage we possess, and of course, government is interested in developing the sector. So that means there is a potential to explore and expand the potential of ecotourism activities. The areas of improvement include the infrastructure. For some of the tourist sites, ecotourist sites, you may have to walk, say, 10, 15 kilometers to get there. It certainly doesn't make it attractive to tourists. Of course, we have hardcore ecotourists who want to hike such destinations. But as much as possible, we also want to encourage as many people as possible to experience these sites. There's also the issue of community involvement. Usually these things, when they are being developed, majority of stakeholders are ignored in the process. And it's important to involve the community. We'll see as we go on. Then there is the area of environmental protection. Of course, recently see a lot of the urban sprawl. You know, for instance, we can't even tell the boundary between Greater Accra and Eastern Region anymore. It's more or less, you know, blended, and between Greater Accra and Central Region and so on. We need to find a way of checking that. And the issue of marketing and promoting ecotourism, also an area we need to improve, and of education and interpretation of what ecotourism is all about. We need to educate people about it. So in improving the state of ecotourism in Ghana, it requires a coordinated effort involving government support, community involvement, infrastructure development, conservation measures, and effective marketing strategies. By addressing these areas, Ghana can further develop its ecotourism industry and maximize the benefits for both visitors and the local communities while protecting its natural and cultural heritage. Now we enter into the subject matter itself. When we embarked on this project, actually somewhere in 2009. The idea for something like this was in its formative stages in 2009. At the time, we considered various options, including a public-private partnership approach. We met a lot of roadblocks, and so we needed to identify a new location for the project. One of the reasons why we needed a public-private partnership approach was because we identified that most of the eco-tourist sites belong to all of us, Republic of Ghana. So what that means is that to be able to situate the project in that location, we needed public collaboration. As I mentioned, we met a lot of roadblocks. I don't want to get into the details of that. So the project eventually was placed in the Okere District, and it finds itself between Teye and Edukro. So portions of the land lie within Teye, and then the other portion lies within Edukro. It's within the Okere District. On the first day, we met in the bush. The client, after all the consultants had been rallied to the first meeting on site, the client made a very simple comment. And this is where we have already driven, say, about 50 kilometers from University of Ghana and walked through the bushes, everybody sweating and all of that, hunting. And then the client says that if you think this project is not possible, please leave. Now, obviously, at that time, no one was going to leave. But what he tried to explain to us was that the project was going to be highly creatively driven. We needed to find solutions to potential challenges that we will meet, and then also avoid instances where the project ended up looking like anything else we know. And also, as he used to say, I don't want it to look like a building in, what's it called, East Legon. So obviously, at that point, then the tone of the project was set. The client's vision was to create an ecotourism facility that brings people closer to nature. The client is a forester, and the team within the group of company. Majority of them are foresters, biological scientists, natural resources experts, and so on. So to some extent, I'll say that it made our work easy. They also wanted to create a facility driven significantly with a high level of local content. So this was not the kind of project where we're going to bring in an international, contractor or consultant or specialist to, help execute. Of course, we needed a few, of these specialists along the way, but majority of the work it needed to be done by Ghanaians. Then the other vision was to attempt a biblical Garden of Eden by creating a serene natural habitat where people, flora and fauna coexist. So this was also another broad vision that he threw at us. Lastly, he wanted this project to serve as a means to educate and an example to conserve the environment and revitalize the local economy in the Okere District. Now, this component of the vision was driven by the experience seen in aqua-safari. So currently, there's a lot of socioeconomic development in Addo around aqua-safari has improved significantly. Aqua-safari employs close to between 400 and 500 people. That alone is direct engagement with the community. And you can imagine what this 400 to 500 people, how they impact the rest of the community. So the indirect benefit that the community draws from this activity. So Safari Valley is located about 60 kilometers from this building. And we did that deliberately so that for those of you who can imagine distances well, then you have a reference to imagine how far it is. So if you are going to Safari Valley from here, it will take you about an hour and 20 minutes. It's located within the Okere District, and it comprises about 7 traditional areas. So you have the Ebru, the Uwe, Ukwa, Edukrom, Apredi, Fierso, and Abonse. And all of these can be found within the district. They share similarities, monalities, and so on. And they speak the one language. And one of the things that we need to note here is that it's a wet tropical region. So I want us to understand the circumstances of the Okere District and one of the reasons why the site was selected. So Okere. So Okere. So as I was saying, it comprises about 7 townships and over 120 farming and satellite communities dotted all over the district. All right. The district assembly has always known of some forest sites, but once Safari Valley began, they began to take it a bit more seriously and have identified about 10 tourist sites that can be taken advantage of. So under the Assembly's guidance, they've been able to identify the Bosumpra Forest Reserve and waterfall at Ebru, Okomfanochi's shrine and his birthplace at Eugua, and the Umbrella Rock, Fertility Rock, Cinema Falls, Falls, they are all there within the district. And all of these can be taken advantage of the benefit of the community. Now, in selecting the site, we were, in selecting the site, we're mindful of other potential tourist locations within a radius of about 30 kilometers. So apart from the earlier ones that I mentioned, we also identified Oti Falls, Ebri Gardens, and so on. These are all attractions that we needed to take advantage of. And as I mentioned earlier, because of the challenges with associating with government to do something within one of these specific sites, we had to choose our own. But by choosing our own, we also needed to go strategic in ensuring that we could have easy access to the other natural ecotourist locations. So the site, we move on to the site now. The site is about 400 acres contiguous. And there's another 200 acres that is not contiguous with what we have here. There are other plans for the other 200, but we focused our energy on the first 400 acres. The project needed to present a number of things. First, to engage the tourist, the visitor, to meet the challenges or the operational needs of running the resorts, and then also to ensure that whatever we did was sustainable. So it comes with a welcome center. There are picnic grounds, horse stables, veterinary, horse paddocks. We haven't done the shooting range yet. There are sports facilities. The chapel is done, but the mosque is yet to be done. And a number of, facilities. In putting this brief together, as I was saying, we were also very particular about how to curate the facility and activities in a way that generates interest and also keep people engaged. So right from the beginning, of course, when you're given 400 acres of land to develop as an architect, you have a challenge. It is easy to see a one plot, somewhere or 1 acre somewhere and then design. It's much easier that way. But with 400 acres, the engagement with the entire land becomes a bit challenging. So you take on data and so on, but data is still inadequate. But are you able to also crisscross the entire site to experience everything? It becomes even more difficult. So we needed to tread cautiously, first to ensure that we conserve the environment, and then also to ensure that we minimize the destruction through construction to the environment. So all of these were things that we're concerned about. So I'm going to start and to some extent walk you through the facility from the beginning of the gates all the way through to the end. Some of the things that we saw in the bushes. Now, I keep saying bushes because it's not a prime forest. When we talk about prime forest, we're talking about forests with trees over 30, meters high and so on. There were a number, but not so many. So to a large extent, shrubby and with woody, so on. Maximum height or average height, you're looking at about 3 to 4, 5 meters. So one of the things that we experienced on the site, which was quite prevalent, a lot of anthills with trees and shrubs like you see in the picture over there. So it formed an idea to provide entrance aid for the resorts. Now, you will notice that at every stage of the scheme, decisions that were made were always with a meaning. These are not random decisions that we make. We need an entrance gate. So boom, entrance gate. It needs to have a meaning and be relevant to the circumstances of the site. The Asante's call it the Ifutisiu. So Ifutisiu meaning what we call termites, house. Oh, that's now moving on from the Ifutisiu. Now you get to what we call the Welcome Center. Now at the Welcome Center, this is where visitors are taken through the do's and don'ts of the resort. A lot of these I explained to you because it's an area of conservation. And so even at the Teye or Nkataso, visitors with vehicles park right there and are taken into the resort with golf carts. And so now the idea for the Welcome Center came from the experience of using plantain and banana leaves. If you experience the farming, circumstances, you'll be on farm and unfortunately it begins to rain. Your immediate, solution, if you do not have a small shack over there, is to what? Take off some palm fronds and then use that to, weather the storm. So drawing from that idea, we chose to articulate it even better through the use of it. And it also signifies that you are at a point where you have not even developed anything yet. You are still in the process of experiencing the results. Now, moving on from resorts, from the so you move on to the picnic area. The reason for that is so that people take it easy over there. First of all, after we've gone through that educational process of understanding the circumstances, the resort, the conservation principles, and so on, people are given a place to rest at the picnic area. And these are all things that we already know and experience, but we found a way of articulating it through the introduction of animals. And we did this also without pushing down all the trees over there. So if you see this image over here, we created the picnic area without pushing down the entire area. So we went in there to thin out the area. Now then it's from the picnic area, you get to the conference facility, which we developed along the lines of the Etumpam. Etumpam, as you know, is a talking drum. And what usually happens within conferencing requires a lot of engagement. So the Etumpam served as an inspiration to develop the idea for the conference facility. And it is the only building within the resort with a brown roof. As we go, you will notice, and I'll explain later. Of course, we also articulated or adorned the building with some Adinkra symbols to reinforce the traditional relevance of the Tumpang and also the cultural heritage from which the Tumpang is relevant. Visitors have a lot of activities to engage in, including hiking, riding bicycles, and so on. And this is all being done within a safe environment. So the animals you experience and so on are not dangerous. You can actually feed them, engage. Comes with a gym, a golf course. And there's what we call the Ansikro, which we fashioned along the stories of Pepuanans. And so there is what we've created in the form of a mix. So children can actually go through the maze, play games as they walk within the maze. And by playing games, executing wins, and so on, they win, what's it called, prizes and so on. And then at the end of the entire process, they are sat down and a story is told to them. Lessons are learned through it. Now, within the area, there were few wildlife. We identified a few of them, but we needed to also introduce some animals in there to engage the visitor. So some of these were imported, others we found locally. And these were all done with the involvement of the biological scientists, the biodiversity people, natural. We did not want to take chances by doing any guesswork, because animal introduction is very sensitive. And so you need to modify the environment to, what's it called, hold them properly. Otherwise they die off, they lose. Now the chapel, when we got to the situation of the chapel, it became a little tough, the decision of how to approach it. A little tough in the sense that how do we explain the situation of the chapel in our local context and traditions? But we found a link, and that link, Congo, whereas they would have used the, what's it called, the tower bell to call members to the chapel. We would use the Congo to call community assembly. So over there, we built to reflect the circumstances of old colonial chapels, but also adorned it with the Congo to reflect our circumstances. Now, you will see this within the, in other images as we go along, but the derive is something that we find locally in our communities, our villages, and so on and so forth. So as one of the attractions within the scheme, we try to introduce the derive in the project without necessarily using what we have now become accustomed to, tiles and all of that. So we did that with the stone. I don't know if you see that, and so on. And then also that is saying certain parts of portions of the project where we needed to create focal points. That saying served as an inspiration for the waterfall. So that's how we integrated it into the scheme. Now, while we were doing this, and mind you, we still needed to ensure and maintain a high level of local content. So as much as possible, any opportunity that arose to do things locally, we chanced upon it. So things like the furniture, beds, the bathtub, and so on, including things that we found in Kogombe and so on, that you would think that you call them what waste, try to recycle all of that into the scheme. And these are all being done for the purposes of education and experience, so that people know that, you know, it's not the fine things alone. I mean, in quotes, the fine things in quotes. If you find a way of reusing, recycling items, you are able to achieve same experience and even better with some of these. Now, at the Siba restaurant, we designed it with a few things in mind. First, with the sunset in mind, very, very stunning. So we identified that, and as I was explaining, this is not something we could have possibly known at the beginning of the project. So in the course of it, we experienced the sunset consistently. And so it's informed where to place that. And of course, it's called the Siba tree, in line with the Siba tree that the walkway focuses on. One of the big trees. Somewhere in the course of discussions with the clients, we wanted this restaurant heavily local, to the extent that visitors can only choose from a variety of local cuisine. But of course, you need to come to some compromises. And you see the display of chastela. One tiger ants. Yes. So we found a lot of them within the development. So to, in a way, recognize their presence, we also identified and created these buildings. So these are the interior. Any solution that we could find to represent us locally, we tried to. Even including, what's it called? When COVID-19 struck, we needed to immediately create areas for people to wash before going into the restaurant. So these were some of our solutions to the challenge. And to go with the restaurant, there is a farm that's been created, and visitors can go in there, harvest their fruits, vegetables, bring it to the restaurant, and you actually get to see it being done. These are all things that we put together to engage the visitor. Now, one of the key issues with the site was that we did not have that main one strong attraction. So, as I was explaining earlier, it would have been easy to identify this. I have only 2 minutes. For 5 minutes already. 50 minutes. Wow. What do I do? Okay, so we are going to run through it very quickly. Please. So we needed that main attraction, and we had to create it ourselves. It had to be man-made. So created these canals, and then most of the eco lodges that came with it, we fashioned along animals, flora and fauna. So we have the hawk, the eagles, the spider, insects, and so on. And these are all things that we were already used to, but we were always looking for ways to identify with the environment. And as much as possible, one of the reasons why we are here today is the choice of material, timber, stone, and as much as possible, where we even use our traditional methods, we ensure that we greened the buildings up so to blend within the environment. So this, for instance, we fashioned along sprouting flower. And these are things that, we try to do as we experience it within nature. And we created other water features within the experience. Now, this is where we need to talk about very quickly. Some of the problems or challenges that we experience include, of course, limited funding, lack of skills and capacity. So initially we brought a few guys, South Africa and Zimbabwe, and join the team. But at the height of the project, we had about 500 participants. Yes. And we say about 99% of them were Ghanaians. And people withdrew from the so within the same district. So of course, there was a lot of community engagement there. And once the development started, we met with a few challenges of people trying to build here and in there. So while we were trying to preserve and conserve the environment, others saw commercial opportunities. And then the geological experience of it, the terrain of plastic was quite the soil, the little plastic. So very, very slippery for the tracks, some falling off here and there. We had to bring in our own people to do some arts, and we engaged a lot of the people in the community. Majority of people worked on the job. I would say maybe about 5% came from Greater Accra, Ashanti, and so on, but majority of the people engaged over there. And the local authority involvement, because at the top, they understood what we're doing, but we found challenges within the middle and then at the bottom. So in most of the decisions that were being made, always being considered as they are just grabbing land and so on. But we always wanted to create wider, bigger buffer to ensure that we minimize the impact of what's it called, pollution. Now, this I wanted to show you this picture particularly because doing projects like these, they are quite capital intensive, and this is at the point where workers had gone on strike, and we needed to, engage them. They're expensive because most of the things are things that you are now thinking about. How do we come up with a new idea for this, and so on? Innovation is expensive. Probably, if some of these had been done earlier, we would already know the cost and be able to represent them properly. So progressively, the cost kept shifting. We were at a point where one of the banks providing facility, I remember one of the board members came to us and said, "Is this what we've been giving our money to? This project is too PN." I mean, if you have been spending this money on the project and you don't even have confidence in the potential output, then we have a problem. But it was always because the project was quite expensive. Yes. So, but eventually they left us, we kept hopping from bank to bank, and eventually now they are back to seek the business again. Yeah, I went. So some of the socioeconomic developments that we saw as we went on in there, the job creation, there was a lot of income, being generated as well. And as we speak, it is still developing. Most of the homes over there, which hitherto were not rented and so on, the skills, knowledge transfer, most of the carpenters on now have significant knowledge, have been prompted to almost also, Madam, that's in just 1 minute, let me conclude. When we are able to find convergence between vernacular architecture and ecotourism, what we are able to do and achieve is promote sustainability. We also preserve our cultural heritage and offer opportunities to educate the young ones, even some of us grown-ups. Some people haven't experienced some of these things before, and we need to do that. And of course, there's the economic benefits of it. So it plays a crucial role in enhancing the appeal and sustainability of it. It not only contributes to the protection of the environment, but also preserves local culture, offers educational experiences, and generates economic opportunities for host communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Teye, for such an engaging presentation. Having us, I mean, architects, we have so many ideas in our head. And so we go on and on and on. And we write through drawings. So pardon us. You are pardoned. All right. So he's taking some of our time. I mean, we were hoping we could have 30-minute engagement with him, but now he's left us with 20 minutes engagement. So without much time wasting, I would invite the in-house audience to ask questions, and I'll take it in this format. 3 at a go, allow him to respond to it, and then we would take the online audience, we'll take 3, and then he would respond before we come back to the audience in-house. So on that note, I see Dr. Appeaning-Addo's hand up as the first person, the first person to ask a question. And then do we have any other hands? I want to get the 3 hands and then. All right, so let's Dr. Appeaning-Addo ask. So by the way, Dr. Appeaning-Addo is from a family of artists and architects. So raise yourself.
Thank you very much for this interesting presentation. Very, very interesting. I have a number of questions, but because of time, I think I would go ahead and ask a language-related question. I realize that, the people of the Okere area, they speak Chopon. Chopon is the one language. But I realized that you were rather using a carpentry, to name some of the places like Fortes, Datiseng, and so on and so forth. And as a language, we've been interested in promoting such less studied languages. I would have preferred, or I wish, that instead of using the carpentry labels, you'd rather use their language, because that would promote the language. And then for educational purpose, who visit the place will get to know about the language. Okay, so you could have used the triple language, and then maybe in parentheses, you would either write English to explain or something or whatever. Now, the Chukon people, those who speak Chukon, their L2 or their second language is Kapintri anyway. Okay, but then we are trying to promote these languages which are less known. So I thought that that would be a good opportunity to promote the language. I'm not sure who suggested those names, whether it really came up even as an issue to use the people's language, because we have taken their lands, a lot of it, you know, so like a form of reciprocity. You could have used their language instead of the, I don't know what you have to say about that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam. So, hello. Thank you very much for this very interesting. Just a quick, I just wanted to find out, in trying to come out with this kind of very creative concept, how much do you take into consideration the history of the space that you went?
Thanks. Let me think.
Okay, thank you, Architect, for this insightful presentation. My question is in relation to the design of the master plan. I want to understand whether that was done by your firm, you know, from the architectural perspective, or it you included other stakeholders. I learned in the presentation that you had biologists and foresters, so I want to know if they played a role in the design of the master plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, Madam, to the issue of language, the blocks are actually named after the towns within the district. So the Infotusil and all of that are engagements with people on the ground. I don't know if you understand. So for instance, the Akataso and so on, it's actually called a cinema welcome center on the ground. But in engaging the community, as we went through the site, we go like architect Pacho, Ifotusuno Bakoa, and so on. So this is what we became accustomed to. But within the premises, when you go there, this is actually called a cinema. Then there's Ukugwa, there is Asisieso, and so on. All the towns within the district that have been named within the area. I hope. Yes. That is the, yes. Thank you. Then the second one is on the history. Absolutely. We were very mindful of the history of the place. But as I was explaining to you, the location finds itself between Ewu and Edukrom. So in responding to the history, we try to be careful not to aggravate or create any tensions in the decisions that we made. So to some extent, we were a little neutral there. I hope that answers your question. Then in terms of the master plan, absolutely. The biodiversity people, natural resources people, in fact, they were They spend more time on the ground identifying areas to conserve, areas to avoid. I think throughout the entire project, there was an error, just one error, where a snake was killed. And the entire project came to a standstill for about a week, because we needed to re-educate everybody again on what we were trying to achieve. So the circumstance of the project was not random. Everything that we did was very carefully decided on and with a lot of investigation. Thank you.
Thank you. We have 4 questions online. Jonathan Bildo says, thanks for the presentation. I would like to know how the projects have local identity and seem to be in harmony with nature. However, I'm a bit critical about community ownership. For example, how did the clients derive the vision for the place? Is that vision shared by the local people? Or what processes led to the birth of the vision? What were the community people doing on the land before the clients came up with the vision for the land? The second one is from David Ofosu Battels, and he says, what was the estimated budget for the project and the project at completion? How did the local leaders within the community assist? Joseph J. Dankwa says, I would like to know the accessibility of barrier-free provisions made in the project to address inclusion of persons with disability in utilizing the facility. And then lastly, Herbert Atumensa says, I wouldn't change anything with the design. Secondly, if you designed only a chapel, but not only a mosque or a traditional worship area, is there a reason for that? And then Anderson is asking, how sustainable is the project? Okay, I'll take the first one so that you can take it. He says, I think the first person has a lot of questions. So I'll take that one, the others later. He asked about local identity and how it seems to be in harmony with nature. And then it's critical about community ownership. So he's asking, how did the clients derive the vision for the place? Is that vision shared by the local people? Or what processes led to the birth of the vision? What were the community people doing on the land before the clients came up with the vision for the land? I'll pause there.
Okay, so prior to identifying the location, as I explained earlier, we have been looking for ecotourism potentials, so sites with ecotourism potentials. But as I indicated, we met a few roadblocks attempting a public-private partnership arrangement. So in doing our research, we identified the current location of Safari Valley and noticed the potential ecotourism sites around that Safari Valley could take advantage of. So first of all, we were driven by the location. And then secondly, in terms of the sharing the vision, we engaged most of the chiefs and elders of the community. We shared these ideas with them, including the district assembly and so on. They expressed some reservations, but we overcame those, with proper explanation and education. So we involved them in the process, and of course, the area of creating jobs and so on was also an area of interest to them, and the knowledge transfer processes and all of that. So that's how we dealt with it. This project could have easily also been located in another place. However, the driver for it was the identification of the ecotourism potential over there.
Yes, so the next one is also the estimated budget for the project and the budget as completion. How did the local leaders within the community assess?
So the budget for the project initially was about, give or take, about $7 million. As we speak now, it's over $40 million. So as I explained earlier, entering into the project, we had an idea for what to do. But once on the ground, we began to modify and we identified things. We realized that we could actually take advantage of that. So we kept improving the situation. So it was one of the reasons why the budget veered target significant. Yes, so in the entire scheme, persons with disability have been provided for. We do not have any building that is more than a level. All our buildings, whether a single level, ramps have been provided. And for those who, of course, for them, we've also provided the golf carts that they can be driven in all the way. So this on the superficial part.
All right, thank you. So we are back in-house. Any questions? Because we've got several questions online. But yes, so that's the first. Can we have two more hands? Okay, so yeah, that'll be the second person, and then that lady will be the third. So in that order, 1, 2, 3.
Thank you.
Identify yourself.
My name is Samuela Chiako Utite. I'm a biomedical engineering student. So yeah, first of all, I'd like to say this is a very impressive presentation. I realize that most of the tourist sites and resorts we go to, there's a lot that goes into their planning and all of that. So all I go to do there is take pictures and relax. And it's very impressive knowing what goes into it. Secondly, I would like to know, most of us here are biomedical engineers, and we're just wondering, we realized that most of their planning had to do with things from nature. We are just wondering if we could implement this in their construction of medical centers, medical facilities, and hospitals, and all of that. Because the tourism bit was a bit out of line for me personally. So I'm wondering if there's anything that we could learn from this and implement it in the sense of and medical infrastructure and all of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I understand vernacular architecture is a technical thing, right? Don't know what the origin is. But there's been a debate of the use of the word vernacular. And some of us in academia believe that it has colonial connotation. Okay, so in place of the word vernacular, just wondering whether you could, maybe in these times that you're talking about decolonization in many spheres, you could consider replacing the word vernacular with another word, traditional, or something. Okay. So I leave that to you. Thank you.
My name is Gloria, I'm a final year engineering student. So my question, when you were doing the presentation, you mentioned that you introduced some foreign animals. I would like to know if the animals are fine, they are allowed out in the reserve.
Okay, so thank you very much for your questions. The concept of vernacular modern architecture and green building and all of that are actually being introduced and integrated into hospital designs and medical facilities as we speak. They are set up in a way to help people rejuvenate and so on, especially after traumatic, medical procedures. So it is something that is actually ongoing. So you can do a bit more research in there. And then, Madam, thank you for your question. As you rightly put it, it's a technical term. So maybe we will encourage to help us address it. However, the term vernacular is used in the context of local crafts, the use of local materials, the effort of local craftsmen in developing structures. It's not focused particularly on colonialism and colonial structures. And so this is something that you can find across the world from continent to continent, area, community to community, and so on. It's not particularly focused on colonialism. Then the issue of animal introduction. When animals are brought in, there's a process that we go through with the Forestry Commission and Wildlife Department. So once the animals are brought in, they are checked, they have their own passports and all of that. And they come in, they are checked by the wildlife people, they assess them. Initially, we quarantine them for a period, and the experts monitor them a few months before they are out into the space. However, before they come in, we modify the area where they will be. Thank you.
Thank you. Because of time, we would need to ask all the questions, but I'll pick two so that we would be able to close. So Matilda is asking how you intend to make the facility affordable for the people of the community, because it would be sad to have such a beautiful facility in your community and not be able to afford to go there and experience it. And I think Okere is asking the considerations that went into planning the near artificial canals to avert cases of flash flooding, and where did the source of the water for the canal come from?
Thank you very much. There are, in terms of affordability, there are, let me call it, ways of engaging the resource. So it varies. The resource can only reflect your aspirations or your expectations. And so it is affordable from as low as can be to as high as you want to experience it. So I don't want to be specific. Recently, opportunities have been created for students, especially pupils, children, and so on, to go in there. So there's a day's visit, a half day's visit. If you want to sleep overnight, the attention is different. And it's all, see, what you are paying for is not to eat and sleep. You are paying for an experience. And that experience has been quite costly to the promoters of the project. So to some extent, apart from contributing to reducing the burden, you are also contributing to conserving the environment. So do not see it as too expensive or this and that. But apart from that, there's also the issue of overcrowding for areas like that. So there's a targeted, pricing and all of that. Thank you. Now, also with the issue of the canal, the source of the water is the rain. It rains quite a lot over there. So the source of water, it was designed to capture rainwater, and it does so consistently. And from the canal, it serves other areas of the resort. So that's how we designed it to be. All right, thank you.
Very much. So thank you very much, Mr. Daniel Teye. We are so grateful for making time to come and share some of your design ideas and also to share some insight. And at least what I take from it is the fact that as an architect or as a designer or anyone that would do something to influence or to change the environment, you need to take into consideration what people think. How does the social aspect play a great role in the whole project or in the whole output? So we need to bear that in mind. And then we also need to bear in mind that nothing is just planned from the scratch. You should be guided by ideas, some theories. You should be informed by some of these things. So thank you so much for sharing with us. At least we've all learned what an anthill, how that could be adapted in our designs. I had one question which we will discuss afterwards, and that question was the approach, the top-down approach that was used as against the bottom-up approach and the challenges that each of them presents. So we will discuss that afterwards. So on that note, I would like to say a very big thank you to our audience for making time to be here. Biomedical students, feel free and then always participate in our seminars, which is held every Thursday, same time. We also have the link. So next week, Dr. Ajay will just let us know what is being presented next week. So thank you so much. My role ending.
Thank you so much, Dr. Appeaning-Addo, for chairing this presentation, and thank you, Engineer Teye, for the presentation. Next week, we have a seminar on a topic on the title Structural Conflict in Knowing or Unknowing and Doing or Undoing Democracy in Africa. And the speaker will be Dr. Mohammed Dan Suleiman from the School of Media, Creative Arts and Social Inquiry at the Teye University in Australia. And I look forward to seeing you all. And to our audience, both in-house and online, thank you for participating in today's seminar. You have been a great audience, and please give yourself a round of applause. Thank you, and enjoy the weekend.